Good morning, this is Cameron, this is Michael. We're here in Kelso and we're going to do a garden interview.
Okay, so the idea out the front here was that we were going to have dryland plants and things that are small and flowering. I've got a couple of taller trees, and there's some trees that obviously there's a lot of exotics in there that are eventually going to come out. But the idea was just to have smaller shrubs and a couple of sort of medium-sized shrubs in between. So it was going to be like a feature for the front. Now I always do natural edging, but a lot of stuff in here is just forbs and there's a few prostate type things, some aeromophilus, some malhanias, just something that's got a lot of colour. It's a pity it's so early in the morning, because the malhania is beautiful when the flowers come out later in the day.
We'll be sticking around for a little while, so a bit of chance it'll come out.
So look, it's a bit higgledy-piggy at the moment, but basically, I have some grevilleas. We started off with some grevilleas, and it's evolved, I guess. They're mostly species grevilleas, Bonapifida, Banksii crosses and Ned Kelly crosses and that sort of thing. A couple of aeromophilus, an aeromophila there, an aeromophila there, nice flowering plants. There's an acacia umbellata, and I also have a Daintree pine there, which I've had in a pot for a long time.
Yep.
Now it's finally gone out in the ground. A couple of sandpaper figs, which I'm trying to get rid of. They were here when I began with. A nice shade tree over in the corner there, which is Acacia Pluma range.
Yep.
Which I'm hoping will produce a lot of shade for the driveway if anyone comes in here. Shade's a big thing to me. I do like shade. I think Townsville can't have enough shade, really.
Totally agree.
In the case here, I don't want a lot of shade in this particular area, because I've found in the past that obviously producing too much shade, you lose a lot of the smaller plants. I've had some lovely Pomelias from out west that are just absolutely stunning, like Hematostachya, and they've been shaded out or outgrown, and you lose them. And the idea of this garden was just to have the smaller plants, which you can feature and love them, beautifully flowering. Attract, for me it's important to attract butterflies or insects, and in some cases birds. This is one of the bigger plants for the front garden, and it's Aeromophila bignonifolia polyculata cross. I'm not great on crosses, but I much prefer the species. But
so that came from a nursery, did it?
Yes, it did. I think it was a budding thing. Annie got this, so.
Oh, it's a nice looking plant.
Yep. A lot of the other plants are, from the bush garden. So we've got Acacia umbellata.
Yep.
Tephrosia. Here's another plant that later in the day will come out and flower, and that's Tephrosia philippes. And it's really pretty. I mean, there's a flower there coming out, but when it's in full flower, it's, as you can see, it's starting to spread along the ground, but it's just quite a beautiful little Tephrosia philippes.
See, your Trichodesma didn't last.
The Trichodesma, even 2 days ago, the Trichodesma zelanica was looking beautiful, but it's just been hammered by the rain. That was so full of seeds, and it's one of the best plants, along with the Commelina over here, for attracting solitary native bees every morning or all day long, because the beautiful blue flowers were coming out. It was always covered in bees, constantly, which is...
Well, Christine, manager of the Bush Garden Nursery, obviously told me that I had to see that plant because it was so beautiful.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's what's happened. It's just taken a hammering.
Oh, never let it be said that a Townsville gardener's complaining about rain.
No, I don't. Well, what's lovely about it is that I've got some new ones here. So, and it was full of seeds. So it's going to be replaced. So I'll pull that out now that I know that it's on the way out. Obviously, that's not going to come back.
And also prostrate vitex.
Yep, that's vitex trifoliata. Got a few weeds in it. So I spend most of the time keeping the weeds down. The trifoliata is quite nice.
A couple of little tiny flowers coming on there.
Yep, and they're the first ones. Another thing about the gardens here is, even though I put in a lot of dryland plants, I find that, for example, the trichodesma there is a great example of where they overfeed. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but they overfeed and they get too big, and as I said, it's split. A lot of the plants here just seem to, the nutrients are so high compared to what they are like out in the bush, that they get bigger and more beautiful, I guess, when they're looked after. So a lot of things you see out in the bush, they look a bit, like they're bare, stony. They're survivors. You bring them into your yard and they just look stunning, just amazing. Pomalina, let's call it Cyanea. It's a 3-petal one, and I've just grown a bit of it and it's spread. As you can see, it's quite prolific. But the most important thing about it is that it attracts so many bees. Now there's the European bees, but there's also Australian solitary bees that use it all the time.
Yep, there are bees everywhere, all through this.
And as long as they stay out, they don't stay open all day, but every morning they'll open up and the bees are just have a feast on it.
It makes an absolutely stunning front display piece.
It does, yeah.
See in the background there, you got a Plants Qld tetraphylla, the orange trumpet tree, I think it's called.
This is part of the, when my asking about street trees.
Yep.
Because we're going to be here for a long time. I want to put in a street tree that's going to be cyclone resistant. Not so sure if that one is, but it does fairly well. But something that's going to be a stunning streetscape tree. One I hope will produce some shade. So we come up with the plants here. It's powering along. It's grown magnificently just in the 2 or 3 months that I've planted it.
Yep. As soon as the rain starts, everything jumps out of the ground.
Oh yeah, it does.
And all the members would be fully aware that over the last 2 months at the meetings we've been discussing street trees at length, and I don't believe Plants Qld was on the list, but was it? Do you remember?
It was mentioned.
Okay.
Because I drew attention to it myself because I was interested to see what it was like in cyclones. So for me, it's important because I don't want them growing too tall, because a lot of the problems I have with cyclones is not so much the trees under the power lines, but the trees on the opposite side of the road that fall over the power lines. So I don't want them to get too big. So cyclone resistant, a stunning looking tree, so a feature tree, and something that produces shade. So, I know we have a lot of local and North Queensland natives that to choose from, but to narrow down to what's going to look the best. And it has to be a reasonably fast growing tree or medium growing. I wanted to put in Maniltoa lenticillata.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, that's a good
stunning
selection.
tree.
Yeah.
I get varying reports. Larry said that, it's very slow growing. So quite a number of people say they're slow growing. And,
Not exactly local, but yep, still a beautiful tree.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So I do have a combination of indigenous plants, as I do in the front here, but they're all generally local to North Queensland, and sometimes there's things that have originated from out west. But, they are all North Queensland natives.
Okay, great. So here is a very, very special plant. This is listed in the Rare and Threatened Plants of Townsville book, written by Greg Calvert and Colin Lockers and Russell Cummings, and it's about to flower.
Yeah, we've got, this is the most stunning plant. I just think if the public knew about it, they would be growing it everywhere, because it has the little fairy petticoats all along the branches, and when it's in full flower, which will be, I don't know, I guess a few weeks away, it's just beautiful. And the reason I've had it in a pot for so long is because I don't want to lose it. So I've got to find out exactly where to put it in. Now having said that, I know that there's one up at the hidden in amongst all the bushes up at Blue Water at the park there, and it's about 3 metres high.
Oh wow!
Just growing in the most rubbishy grey clay soil you can imagine. I don't want to lose this, because this was given to me a lot of years ago. So eventually it'll go in the ground, and I can only imagine that if it's 3 metres high and in full bloom, it's just a world beater. Just amazing. And of course comes from the slopes up on
Pinnacles.
the pinnacles. So it's so rare that's really the only spot that we know of that it grows. Just an absolutely stunning plant that would probably end up going all around the world.
Dubzetia saxatilis.
That's it.
I don't know whether that's the correct pronunciation, but beautiful, beautiful plant.
Yep. Now we're around the back of the house. This is where the bulk of the garden is. And the interesting thing about this is we've got Ross River right down there. The property goes right down to the river. It's a long block, but it's 3/4 of an acre. Now, because of the location, we're up on the top of the, if you like, the levee bank here, and then we've got a slope, and then we've down at the base of the slope, then we go, it undulates down to the river. So we've got very different growing conditions. So up the top here, it's clay. It's not heavy clay. You know, it doesn't take long for the water to drain. So it's not horrible clay. It's quite good. On the slopes here, we've got a little bit of sand, you know, sand from the river, but the slope has a different growing requirement altogether, and we're adding humus back into it by dumping as much mulch as we can, producing mulch here, but also just trying to get the worms back in and trying to get, you know, build it up. To begin with, that was when we first bought this place less than 3 years ago. It was just overgrown with exotics. There was a big West African fig there. I had bit the bullet and had it taken out. There's not many exotics left in there, but I'm gradually replacing it with natives. Now it's what I've done in the yard is I've divided into areas. Now that area there I'm calling my rainforest area. So there's plants in there that are rainforest trees or rainforest margin trees, more dryland sort of stuff as well. But so that's our rainforest thing. This little section in the centre I've got leptospermums growing, plus a few Cape York type plants, some of the smaller stuff. I'm trying to generate flowering plants for the native bees because I'm into beekeeping.
Yeah, yep.
So I'd like to get some of the trigona bees happening. So I've got,
tiny little stingless native bees.
yeah, the little stingless bees which produce the most magnificent honey you've ever tasted.
So the basic structure here is obviously you've got this Tesselaris over the top.
Well, yes, it is, and that's what attracted us to the property. We almost bought it on the spot. We walked around the back here. We saw the front of the house and thought, oh, the house isn't that great. We walked around the back here and just said, this is just beautiful. And most people have the same reaction. So we persevered with it. So it's been, you know, when we first got here, this was basically all guinea grass. It was so high that potential buyers couldn't even get down to the river. So it put a lot of people off. But
You've done a great job in 3 years.
well, yeah, it's been a lot of work, and it's you know, I've had a few interludes where I haven't been able to work in here for a year or so. So, you know, take that out. It's been fairly intense, and it's it's a transitional garden, I guess. You know, there are things, as you'll see later, that are there at the moment, but as things grow and develop, it'll evolve into a different area. But yes, that's the rainforest area. So.
What else can we see there? Obviously, black bean, Castanispermum mistral over there.
The black bean was here before. It's going to come out.
Okay.
I know it's a native and it's a beautiful flat flowering tree, but it has the beans. It's probably a bit big for what I want in there, so it's going to come out. It's been left there as a shade tree at the moment.
What's behind it? What's that larger tree behind it with the broadleaf?
That's Premnus erratifolia.
Oh,
now
nice.
that's one that has been propagated by Alan King. It was taken off a plant that I had at Wellington Street. That even though it's a local native, it's a plant that doesn't go to fruit. So because it doesn't go to fruit, it flowers all year round.
Oh, nice.
Seedless. I think that's a natural, naturally occurring thing. But because it doesn't go to seed, it flowers all year round, and it's just a mass of butterflies and insects in the morning, particularly. It's just probably the central tree, in my experience, the central tree in the yard that does provide a lot of nectar to insects and butterflies. So.
Okay. There's the black bean tree that's about to come out, and then there's Premnus erratifolia behind it. Okay, I can see the Premna down there, yes, sorry.
That's the gardenia Gary Sankowski. Now, I was given that by Peter Radke, but he wasn't sure at the time what it was, but it's a lovely gardenia. I don't believe it's flowered yet, but it's going to be quite a pretty tree.
Scalopia brownie over there, obviously.
They're escapees from next door. They've got a rainforest scalopia, so I leave them there because they're the Australian rustics breed on that. So
yep. I can see Australian rustics flying around over there.
Yeah, I've got some Flacordia Shipton's flat in there as well. They're also a host plant for the rustics, so they've got plenty to feed on here.
And there's a giant exotic senna or something or other up there providing a lot of shade.
Where's that? Oh, yeah, on next door, yeah, that's
Yep.
Splendida or something. Something I always constantly pulling out weeds.
And hibiscus.
Sticulia quadrifida.
Oh yes,
which
of course.
was here when I arrived. I have another one in a pot up there, but it's probably a better fruiting one. There's a Filaria clerodendron, which is a lovely flowering, sweetly scented plant. So that's the Filaria there. It's not in flower at the moment.
See that? Yep, they flower magnificently.
Yep. Now you asked about plants that are favourites. One of my favourites is one that comes from Cape York. I don't think I think it's quite rare in cultivation. Sorry, it's Morinda reticulata.
Morinda, obviously Morinda citrifolia is local around here.
Yep, which I've got down in the Bushtaker garden. But
And this one is called Morinda?
It's Morinda reticulata.
Okay. And
So
that's,
if you want me to show it to you?
yes please.
I think it's much at the moment, but it has a tuber underneath. There it is there. Now you see it's got a bit of new growth in it, but there's a tuber in the ground there that's developing. Once that develops, it'll send a shoot up, and then it'll develop into a beautiful shrub that has stunning white bracts. So it has stunning white bracts and has central flowers that have a cup of nectar in them. So they're going to be a great source for the insects and birds in the yard. But it's certainly, if you like your Bangkok roses, this looks very similar. It has the big white bracts. It also has the advantage of having beautiful nectar source in their flowers, central flowers as well. So
I'll be interested to see that when it grows up a bit.
yeah, well, it's been there for 2 years, and it's survived. So I think that's one of my specialty plants. That's one I really want to see
Brought into
survive.
cultivation.
Yeah. Now here's the Omphalia salata,
Ah,
which is the natural host plant for the zodiac butterfly.
right, yeah, yep.
So far it's survived. There's 2 of them. There's another one here, and hopefully when the zodiac moths are migrating, it'll attract them, and I'm going to have zodiac moths in the yard. So that's
Well, that'd be good. I've never seen zodiac moths in Townsville yet.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. So, but I'm told that they will arrive. Now here's a Poliscius that comes from Ballin and Kerr. Now I don't know. I think Alan gave this to me. It's not a particularly big one, so and I don't think it's a species. Either it's a species that he didn't know, or it's a new species. So we don't.
Oh
we don't
wow,
know yet.
that's exciting.
Up till about a week ago, I had a huge, great olive-coloured carpet python in here.
Oh wow.
So it was underneath. We do have quite a few snakes here. This one's it's a pet, so the neighbours know. It's been around for a lot of years.
Oh, you've also got blue triangle butterflies all over that.
Yep. Yeah, this is the Premna. Now because it's not. Oh well, what's that? Yeah, it's not a particularly sunny day today, so there's probably not a lot of insects around. Certainly, on a sunny day, this is just covered in insects. It's also a plant that needs to be it needs to be trimmed to keep it in a good shape. But it certainly is a fantastic nectar supply for the butterflies and insects, as I said.
Right,
Yep.
Great Townsville butterfly tree.
Yep.
And micromelon minutum, I suppose.
So I've got micromelon minutums. I had 6 of them. This is the rainforest form, I've been told. And they're starting to propagate, so they've obviously fruited. I missed that, but it's fruited, so a few of those are coming up, and they're obviously a great source of for butterflies. It's a host plant for several butterflies, and obviously the birds love the fruit. So it's a great. It's not a big plant. It might get to 5 metres, I guess, but it's a must-have.
Petalostigma there.
Who's that? No,
No?
these are
Antidesmus again. Sorry. Yep.
Antidesmus parvifolium.
Yep.
Now 2 of those have fruited already. Beautiful fruit. You can make jam out of them. They're quite small, but very, very sweet. So if you persevere with them, they're very good jam making trees too. So that's a lovely. And the good thing about this one is that it's a local native that doesn't get too big. It's a good shade. It's a good screen tree. I'm trying to screen off the shed here, but it's something that fruits, attracts birds. It doesn't get too big. and it's just perfect. It's ideal.
There's a
Another
wild
one of my
citrus.
favourite genus is Capparis.
Oh, okay.
So this is Capparis lucida. They start off life as, I've got 3 of them here. They start off life as something small like this, something quite small. Now I've seeded these myself.
So what's the species name, sorry?
It's Capparis lucida.
Lucida, okay, yep. I've seen
So
these on Magnetic Island.
Yeah, they start off pretty small, and then they develop a spike in the middle. That's this one here, and that ends up like this. So once that gets going, it goes up and produces a lovely tall shrub. Again, it's going to be a screen tree, but the best thing about it, A, it produces fruit which is quite edible. It's not something that's quite edible, but the best thing is it's the larval food plant for the albatrosses and the Cape of whites. And
Oh yeah.
there's about 4 different butterflies. It's interesting because they're actually, because of the green stems, they're actually evolved with these butterflies. The butterfly they'll strip those completely bare almost, and then they'll pupate and they'll go away and form Cape of whites or albatrosses or whatever they might be, and then the plant just throws out a whole set of new leaves. So it's an evolution thing where the butterflies and the bush have
Co-evolved. Yep.
this symbiotic kind of relationship. So it's quite stunning. It's a nice plant. When it's in flower, it's quite beautiful.
Yes, this is one of my absolute favourite grass species.
Yeah, this has gotten a little bit out of hand. More sunshine, it develops a slimmer leaf, but the ones, as you saw up in the shade house, they're all from the same plant, but the one up in the shade house has developed bigger leaves. So now in there, believe it or not, there's 2 of the North Queensland native microcitrus. There's microcitrus inodora,
Yep.
and there's Garawayii just over there. So they're quite rare microcitrus plants. So Australasica from down south, I've given up on. They seem to die on me. So, but certainly the 2 of the northern microcitrus are growing quite happily in there. The Opus manus, well, you know, it can come out. I've got a Syzygium cryptophyllidum in here, which produces it produces fruit, but it has the most stunning flower display. The new leaves are just the hottest pink colour, so they're quite pretty. Just up in here,
Diploglottis.
I've got a Diploglottis smithii, which is, you know, with silver. That's a new flower spike leaf spike that's just come out. Absolutely beautiful. I've grown Diphyllostedgia before. Produces a lovely fruit that you can make into drinks or jams. This one will be similar. I've not grown this one before. Pavetta australiensis, which is a lovely flowering plant, again for butterflies. Now over here we've got, that's a Faradea splendida. Now it's going to be quite a big vine, so I'm not sure what to do, but I'm going to try and see if I can attract people to take cuttings, possibly put it, because it's another Alan King one, so it's going to be an exceptional example of that particular species. But so I'm not just going to cut it out. I think it will get a bit too much for that location. I've planted it, it's surviving. Let's see if we can take cuttings or maybe take seeds off it and propagate it to put into an area that might be a little bit more appropriate. But it certainly is quite a stunning vine, and I believe it's food plant for some butterflies as well. But
Okay. And speaking of food plants and butterflies, there's a
Euodia next door, yeah.
giant Euodia next door. Beautiful big tree. I bet you there's a lot of people in Townsville where they'd be surprised to see a Euodia that big, considering how many people have got them planted in their front yards, including myself.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite plants, only from the sense that it's a beautiful flowering yellow hibiscus heterophyllus. So it has beautiful big yellow flowers with a red throatum, so it's quite pretty. I don't think it serves any other purpose except the fact it's just pretty. You know, it's one of the few I've got here that it's having the yellow ones. I think they're reasonably rare. So
And that's Hypoestes floribunda.
It is, and it's gone nuts. But I've left it there because it's serving a purpose at the moment. It's obviously the bees love it. It's propagating quite nicely. When things get shaded out, it will change.
That's native, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yep, it's a local one actually. Beautiful purple flowering, quite prolific. But these verticillatus here, I'm hoping to hedge it. See, in the past I've planted out bush gardens more or less. You know, everyone does bush gardens, I guess. But what I want to develop here is a bit of a combination of a more formal native garden. Because if you watch TV, Gardening Australia and places like that, people are beginning to rediscover that you can use native plants to produce formal gardens, and I quite like them because, you know, I'm going to hedge them down here, so there's going to be a certain formality about it. that's going to be enticing. You know, native gardens aren't all about just go crazy bush gardens, you know, so we can, I don't know if I'll go as far as topiary, but I'll certainly hedge things and make it a more formal look. It's Graptophyllum excelsum.
From Magnetic Island, yep.
Magnetic Island, yeah, it's a magnetic island. There's a few thorns in them, but they're absolutely beautiful flowering.
A couple of little red flowers there, note.
Yeah, there's not a lot. They're not. This is Graptophyllum excelsum too, but it's a form that comes from the Waltz River.
Okay.
That's more an even more dryland form. Not as many spikes, but you can see, even though it's the same genus and species, it looks quite different to me. They're not too big either, because obviously from up the top we don't want to screen off the view to the river. This is Vitex benthamiana. Now it's something I discovered when I was working out at Jugal River. I came across it out in the bush. It was in a creek crossing, and it was absolutely covered in butterflies, albatrosses and caper whites. Butterflies were just going crazy over this bush, so I managed to get hold of this from that area, and Alan King has propagated it, and it's now flowering profusely.
Well, same family as Buddleia, isn't it? So you wouldn't be surprised if it's a very good butterfly plant.
It is, but like a lot of things I've found that I brought out of the bush, out around Jugal River, which is northwest, about 100 k's northwest of Cloncurry, the butterflies were just absolutely covering it, but you bring it into town and there's a lot more competition.
Oh, yep.
So I have seen insects. I've seen some really weird looking insects on this that I can't identify. It does attract a certain amount of insects. I don't know if I've seen any butterflies on it yet, but there are a lot of other plants around here that the butterflies would probably take to, but it certainly is a rare plant. It only comes from out in that area, like the Gregory River catchment area, Cloncurry area. So it's a vitex and it's a lovely flowering plant. So we'll see. You know, I know that it will probably hedge pretty well. Sorry, not hedge. It'll be something that you can prune into shape. I think it could prove to be a really nice plant. And you can see, like, this has only been in here for 18 months maximum, and it's been flowering, you know, within the first year. So yeah, so it's Astromertus lysophala. There's a lot of them. If you go to the lookout at Mount Tozer, up on the way to Portland Roads, there's a lot of them there.
North.
It's a long way north, yeah. It's a heathland plant, but I like it because I don't know if anyone else has got them, and they're beautiful flowering, not too big. And sort of.
What colour flowers?
I think they're white, but they're quite pretty and fairly prolific as well. This come from up around Bammingham. It was given to us by an Aboriginal woman who Annie befriended. I've been after it for a long time, but it develops like that one over there. It'll develop a shrub, and all of a sudden it'll just throw up a spike, and then the spike will grow. The central trunk will develop. So I'm expecting big things from this. So
Not much broader leaf than other Manicaras that I've seen previously.
okay. Yep. Well, I know this one comes from around Bammingham, so where the Aboriginal women got it from, I'm not sure, but it was certainly given to us in a pot. So
Maybe it's just growing in better conditions.
could be. I'm hoping it'll develop that silvery look on the bottom, but again, that might be a more drier feature. I guess. Most of the stuff here is native. There's a Syzygium lemanii, there's Morinda citrifolia, there's Corellia just over the back here. There's a Corellia.
Oh, nice. I love Corellias.
It's just stunning. The 4-o'clock moth is just a beautiful, not only a beautiful larva, but also a caterpillar, or it's just a beautiful moth. The Tim Tam tree is doing quite well, again from the bush garden.
Yep.
Same as the Corellia there. Then I've got another genus I particularly like is
Terminalia.
Terminalias. Ferdinandiana I'd like to get hold of, but this is
Mulleriana.
is Muelleri. So again, I'm growing it for bush tucker. So the fruit on this one and a lot of the other terminalias are very high in vitamin C. So.
And another one that we featured heavily in the previous month's meetings, the Terminalia group as a whole, Porphyrocarpa.
Porphyrocarpa, yeah.
Is a very floriferous species.
Yes. Some of the terminales like Microcarpa get particularly big. I mean, the street trees, but all right. It's a pan-tropical grass. If you can see the purple flowers, and it's just developed there on its own. There's an old coconut stump, but it's developed this grass. Now, to me, this is an ideal lawn, and I have grown. This is a small restricted lawn. It comes up everywhere. People would recognise it with the purple flowers, but it is a local legume.
Oh, wow.
Produces the best grass because it has a really big taproot, huge taproot. You don't need to water it, and you very rarely do you ever have to need to mow it. If I could develop that as a lawn, I'd be
wrapped.
Three quarters of my job here in this yard would be.
This is another special plant. This is an successful experiment conducted by the Bush Garden Nursery.
Okay, so what the Bush Garden has done here is they've generated this Acacia holoricea,
yep.
as a host plant because the Exocarpus latifolius is a parasitic plant, so
yes.
very, very difficult to propagate. In fact, when I saw it down the Bush Garden, I said to Chris, how did you get that to grow?
I know that's only a tiny little plant, but that is fairly special. I don't think there's too many people in Australia that know how to grow that.
Yep, and it's been a success. I pay it special attention because I want that to grow because ultimately it might not parasitise this plant, but certainly there's coconuts and there's going to be other plants here. So it's a plant I want to grow because the fruit, it's a bush tucker fruit as well.
Yep.
I think it's a host for a couple of butterflies as well, but it certainly will be an achievement if we can get that to grow. So
I agree.
love it.
Well done.
Okay, so we're at the end of the garden, so we're right on the banks of Ross River. It's absolutely beautiful. We've had a lot of rain. Now what I've tried to develop here, if you look on the right hand side, just over here, this is what we started off with. We started off with massive amounts of Singapore daisy. I had it all the way through here. It was Singapore daisy and lots of guinea grass. So I've by hand taken all that out. Annie and I have just ripped all that Singapore daisy out by hand, and we're now revegetating local natives. The grasses come from the Bush Garden. There's a Vetiver elongata that I've planted here. That's not exactly local, but it's certainly Gulf country. This one comes from near Normanton. Absolutely beautiful grass. The flower spike's very attractive to birds. The local ones are, the other grasses here are local natives that come from the Bush Garden. We've got some bird's nest ferns, a couple of those. Now we've got another dry island.
Drynaria rigidula.
This one came from the guy up at up at Herberton, who just gave me a bunch of stuff that he had in his yard. We've got Dinellas. I've developed this, trying to get this to go. It's one of these succulents that comes from down in the mangroves. It's all around towns. It's quite common, but I quite liked it.
Sesuvium, is it?
What is it?
Sesuvium portulacastrum, maybe?
I don't know. I've got to get it identified. It could well be.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. I really appreciate the time. I'm supposed to cut this down to about 5 minutes, so it's going to be a massive task to cut so many fantastic plants down. So you can see the garden. He's done a magnificent job in 3 years. I can't wait to see what it looks like in the coming years. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely, thank you.